Welcome, everybody. My name is Mugsy, the creator. I am the host of the podcast, The Universe According to Mugsy, where we climb through the levels of reality that play out before your very eyes in the current events section, and then we climb up that ladder to prove that current events are actually a product of the culture. And if you want to have any effect over that culture, the only effect you can have is over your own individual consciousness. We just recorded our 100th episode. I could not be more excited, more grateful. It has been quite an unbelievable journey. But last week we went live and we answered some questions about love on Valentine's Day. So I figured for the 100th episode, we would answer some questions from a podcasting entrepreneur or founder perspective. Again, we're going to use Chat GPT until enough of you guys are out there submitting questions live in the live chat or submitting questions to me at mugsythecreator.com, where you can find all of the resources to check out my show wherever it is published. Patreon, Spotify, YouTube, all over. We go live on YouTube and then we switch the live over to the Patreon. So make sure you are following me on patreon.com/MugsyTheCreator, the best website ever created. Let's get into some of these questions that the AI is asking me because you guys haven't started asking yourself. Some questions for craft and creativity. What was your original vision for your podcast and how has it evolved? I don't think there was an original vision other than to have a podcast. I would have loved to know exactly the direction that we were going to go in, but it started out as an audio broadcast and then it moved. Like, who does an audio podcast in 2023? When we started it, we were already way far down the rabbit hole. Like, it obviously had to be a live video stream to some degree, whether it was live or whether it was recorded, but it evolved into this, and we'll do everything live if that's the way you guys want it. It makes no difference to me, but we are recording it now, and we came up with the structure of current events, culture, and consciousness. That didn't happen until somewhere around the 27th episode. If I remember correctly, that's when we started honing in on that as an scaffolding to carry us through the rest of the podcast. And my original vision was the universe, according to Mugsy, being able to talk about whatever I wanted to because of the guests that I would have on. Guests are harder to get on than I would have initially thought, but it's fine. We'll make it a solo cast until the times we get guests. Well, Theo Vaughn, this motherfucker. What episode changed everything for you? So it wasn't one episode in particular. I think it was a series of realizations, just like we talk about Plato's allegory of a cave. When you come out of the cave and you see the light for the first time, you're like, oh my God, everything looks so much different. And I had such a limited perspective before I stepped outside of the cave. And I think that was just one continual evolution from one podcast to another. You're learning something. I'm not an audio or video engineer. I was an economist and a banker for many years. So what you're doing is you're learning how to learn again. You're learning how to admit your faults, things that you put out that don't sound good. You have to figure out how to fix them. And we were just in the process of doing that over the last 100 episodes. And you kind of see, if you have watched a bunch of podcasts, you're going to say this one looks different, but I don't know why. Because you're not picking up on the fact that it's the lighting and I didn't figure out how to get a key light on my face and that's why there's so many shadows going on. Or why the bangs are so loud because I didn't understand how to normalize my audio. All things that happen over time. So there's not one particular episode that shines through as like, oh, that's when we had it. I don't think so. Other than like a series of events. Like, oh yeah, we're really getting something here. We're really picking up steam. How do you prepare for interviews? Go beyond surface level conversations. I think everything I am is beyond surface level. If you're looking for surface level, I think I'd go somewhere else. How do I prepare for them? I don't ask someone to have a conversation unless I'm confident that I can drive the conversation if I had to in a certain direction. That's not what I'm looking to do. My goal for the interview is to speak as little as possible and allow the guest to shine as much as possible and present themselves in the best light. So I look at myself as trying to help stage them so that they can show off whatever it is that they're doing. I wouldn't have asked you to show off on my podcast if I didn't want to have a conversation with you. So I think about it from a team perspective, like I'm on your team. What would help me get to know you better is if I know what the hell it is that you're coming on to talk about, maybe. So when I have my Nicole Vernon friend, the owner operator of the Vernon Family Farm, I spend some time researching farms, eating food from farms, from family farms, going all over the region looking at farms. It's not until I hone in on something that Nicole Vernon is doing differently that I make it a point to, which you're going to know. You're going to know straight away because you're going to see me and I'm going to be a patron at your place of business. If you see me shopping at your store, you can be damn sure that I like it. If I'm not doing the investigation, especially if I'm coming back more. So it was no surprise when she kept seeing my face. And then I kept dropping off like, hey, I'd love to have you on a podcast if you'd like to talk. So I do my homework. And I think it's important to do your homework as best you can, especially if you... I'm not going to have a conversation with you just to have a conversation with you either. I am looking to learn something about you, the way that you conduct your business, your energy, how you carry yourself. I'm trying to learn something about you. So that's why I'm trying, like I'm already doing that research in the first place, I guess is what I was getting at. So yeah, do some research, figure out what you want to talk about, figure out what you want to get to the bottom of with that individual. Or do you want to just see the world through their eyes? That's also a reason to have a conversation with someone. What's your framework for asking powerful questions? I think I'm probably unique in the sense that I probably ask them more off the cuff because they're not massively powerful or important. They're the little things that you should be paying attention to all the time. If you're not paying attention to those little things all the time, I mean, those are the big powerful ones. It's the little things that you're doing all the time. Have I ever scrapped an episode? I did. I definitely have scrapped one episode. I think I put it out anyways on my Patreon. When I was at the beginning of this, I was much more determined to show the viewer and the audience everything that I was going through, personally, professionally, emotionally, and figuring things out. Because any one of you guys who know the answer to the questions could have helped me along the way. So where were you then, numbnuts? Where were you then, numbnuts? Huh? Why aren't you raising your hand asking that question on episode 42 when I was still trying to figure out Instagram or how the audio worked? Where were you then? But yes, I scrapped some. I took one down because of some things that I touched on personally that you guys never would have known. But I took them down because I never wanted you to ever get the chance to figure them out. When did you realize you had real momentum? I think we've talked about it. When you have a podcast and you want to have guests and guests do not come on your podcast, it's because you haven't created enough gravity and momentum to carry yourself forward. That momentum that we're talking about started when I began having guests. It's also when you begin having guests, it's when you can test your actual knowledge of the equipment that you're using, how to record quality audio, how to record quality video. What are the things that go into that? What are the spaces and environments that you can overcome the audio and make up for it in your engineering skills? And what are the environments where you can't do that? And you may need to exercise more control over where you allow the interview to be conducted. These are all things you learn. That's what I had to learn by having podcasts in different environments and always kind of retooling where we're at. How do you balance growth with authenticity? I'm not so much worried about the growth, except for the growth in how I perceive the thing that we're putting out. I believe it's an unbelievable product that is a quality product that if you take a look at the conversations we're having, there's so much depth there. I try and explore it with some levity, recognizing that the people at home aren't going to be understanding the concepts as easily as I am understanding them, and trying to continually rebalance the way that I'm looking at it so that if I seem to be taking a economic angle for a couple of episodes in a row, how do I revert back to a biological sense or technology or chemistry so that it will invite more people into the conversation, because the concepts that we're talking about aren't complicated. The issue is people get in their own way and they start to hear words or a vernacular that they're not used to, and it intimidates them and they get afraid of even giving that stuff a chance. That's growth and authenticity. So I'm constantly trying to be as authentic a human being as I can be. Like I was saying before, I may have presented that too much in the beginning by not clipping out as much as I should have clipped out from podcasts to make it flow more smoothly and understand that it's more of an orchestra that I'm putting together and we're all playing beats at the same time. But I think, so I'm worried about the authenticity. Growth will come. I'm focused on growing in the ways that I see fit. And if any of you guys want to point out any ways that I could grow that I might also pick up on, I'd love to hear from those. What's one growth strategy that surprised me? Relaxing into it. At the beginning of this, we talked a lot about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and that comfort level you reach in the new uncomfort is growth. That is how you grow. So I was surprised at how well that worked. How do I handle audience feedback? I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. To some degree. If anybody hits on an area of my ego that I haven't beaten down enough, I'd be happy to do that. Like, thank you for doing that. That's the way that I interact with the world and structure my life. Is my friends are the people that teach me things, so you don't even need to be nice to me to teach me something. So if I remove the judgment from the thing that you're saying and just see the judgment, or just see the thing that you're saying as the thing that you're saying, that's what allows me to handle audience feedback, because I'm not tied to the outcome either. Like, there's so many times I've been such a knucklehead, such a dummy in my life that, it helps when people point it out. I don't get mad about that. What does success mean to you? I mean, I think there's still an aspect of I would like for someone to have watched this, but I'm far less tied to that. Far less tied to that, and far more tied to the fact that I want to be doing something fun. I want to be having interesting conversations, and I want to be enjoying this journey wherever it leads, whether there's an audience or not, because this is my goddamn life and I'm doing this for a reason. And I've been having a blast. It's been so fun, even just to learn become an audio-visual engineer after being an economist for so long, and all the other things that I've done, being a waiter, like all these things. Technical, you want to get behind the scenes now. What's your production workflow and how do you avoid burnout? These are good questions. My workflow has evolved. I would say that I didn't understand technically what I was looking and listening for at the beginning. Being able to structure and organize myself was what allowed my workflow to become more seamless. Capturing the audio and the video, you need to practice a whole bunch of times, because otherwise you're uncomfortable thinking about whether you're capturing the thing that you want to be capturing, and you need to forget about that so that you can get into the workflow of whatever you have. You capture what you capture whenever you're out there, and it's the after effects that you have to retool yourself on to figure out how to make the most. Whatever you get is what you get. Maybe you have to re-record sometime, but the magic is what happens behind the scenes. That's the workflow that we're talking about. When you start looking at things, look at them all together in one pass so that you're not jumping around from thing to thing. What I mean by that is you don't want to be listening for the audio at the same time your brain is thinking about things to include as cool visual representations during the podcast. So to improve the workflow, what I do is I make passes, listening for audio, getting rid of all of the pop sounds in the podcast. Areas where there's no... So the first pass is story. Second pass, I'm really doing way more audio. Third pass, I'm doing visual. And then fourth one's kind of sound effects, special effects, and maybe some more video retooling. I've learned to make cuts faster and make decisions quicker, because that is what gets you to a finished product. It's never going to be the perfect thing, especially if you're some sort of artist or engineer or perfectionist. It's never going to be all that it could be. It's only going to be whatever you produce. So you have to recognize that you have to let go of the perfection in order to get the product out there. And who cares? Essentially, you'll have another practice next week when you do another podcast or whenever it is you do another one. How do I avoid burnout? I don't work for too long in the same podcast or in the same session. I separate recording, like which I just did, or I guess I'm doing today, from when I'm going to listen to it back. I give myself some time and air to breathe. I already have a plan for other things that I'm going to be doing after. I also, that keeps me moving from one thing to another so that I'm not just sitting there with the entire podcast looking at all of the things that need to be done. I'm moving in some sort of structured steps. I was going to say something. Also, I work out before I podcast most of the time. So that keeps me calm, cool, and collected. It gets my brain on a wavelength that I'm prepared to do something hard because I've just done something physically hard. So this can't be that much harder than the thing that I was just doing. That helps me with the burnout. It limits my ability to work for an extended amount of time, right? You got to work out in, then maybe I'm going to work for 4 hours and then I'm going to have a break scheduled in there. Perhaps I'll come back to it later in the afternoon or evening, but I take breaks. What's the hardest part of being a podcaster that no one talks about? An environment where you can talk to other people like you and what you're doing. I think the hardest part of being an audio-visual engineer alone and running this entire operation alone, other than the support that I get from my on-the-scenes producer, my family, my friends, and all that, the life that I've structured for myself, is there is no community. Like maybe it's different if I was in Austin, Texas, or if I was in Hollywood. There would be more people that are creating more things. But in Boston, Massachusetts, in the city of Salem, there's only a few people that are creating and doing the thing that I'm doing. So it's hard to share the experience, I guess, feel included. How do you monetize it without compromising trust? I've taken a hard stance on this, is I don't. I don't advertise for other people. And one of the people that I would have advertised for, I had to come out because it turns out that the product that they were selling, my Van Man guys, their toothpaste, their tooth powder, was contaminated with lead. And I don't feel like I would have authentically been able to critique them and everything that they are going through if I did take money from them. So I don't accept money from advertisers. If you want to support me and what I'm doing, you can go to mugsythecreator.com. You're going to want to click that Patreon link, or you can go directly to patreon.com/mugsythecreator. You can sign up for $3, $6, or $9 per month. That's all it is for all of the content that I'm putting out there. A lot of it will be private conversations like this that we will have together, and it will not be broadcast out to everybody on YouTube. But answering these questions is something that I do with my audience intimately. I am invested in creating something together with an audience, and I want to make sure that they are getting the most out of it as well. So any ideas or information for podcast guests or philosophical questions, struggles that you're having in your life, those are things that I want to address on the podcast. It would be helpful for me if you did submit those questions. Privately, I'll keep you anonymous if you choose to be anonymous, or you can tune in for the live streams, especially the ones on Patreon, where we do this intimately in a private setting with the doors closed to only the people that pay money to get in. So you can be sure that your question specifically will not reach the entire broader community, at least in those Patreon sessions. What would I do differently if I started today? Nothing. All the dumb things that I did, all the times that I didn't fix my audio and put the podcast out anyways, was part of the experience and the ride of what I'm doing, and you'll see what I'm talking about as you start to go back and unwrap the chapters that I have laid out there for you on the universe according to Mugsy. We have this is like CEO and strategy stuff. I just want to make sure we're still live here, running. Yep, no problems there. What decisions defined your leadership? I think that we just talked about the decision to accept advertising. I I may have to change my mentality and my attachment to just who it is that I think that I am. The flexibility to keep you in business is always like the most important thing. It's great to have such strong moral character, but eventually you may need to change the way that you look at things, and because that may be judgment that's tying you down. Maybe flexibility has defined my leadership. The ability to be flexible when I record, how I record, the lighting that I record, the places that I record. Probably flexibility. Let's go with that. How do you communicate vision in uncertain times? I guess these are questions for people that are leading teams, which I have done. I am not necessarily doing at this moment in time, but communicating my vision, I think, is what I do in the podcast, and I communicate it in uncertain times by trying to stay grounded. I focus a lot on grounding, whether I'm grounding outside by putting my feet on the earth, in the sand or the pavement or whatever it is, or whether I'm grounding myself by eating vegetables or spending time with friends and family. These are all different ways to ground. Meditation's another one. So especially the more uncertain times get, the more grounded I try and become, like a tree, right? The tree of consciousness, grounded deep with deep roots into the darkness. What's the hardest call that you've had to make? I don't think I've had to make too many hard calls at this point. What about separates good leaders from great ones? Transparency. Transparency in what I'm trying to show you, what I'm trying to do here, how I'm trying to show people how to create things and build. I talk about this all the time. I asked my dad when I was a kid, who owned his own business, I asked him why we take out the trash. And he was like, you never asked someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to do all of the things myself, certainly, before I asked anybody else to do anything for me. And the other part of that is I asked my dad why he explains himself so often to his employees, because you don't have to do that when you're the boss. And the reason being is because we want everything to flow smoothly when we're out. So in order for things to flow smoothly when the boss isn't there, all of the people need to understand not only what it is that they are doing, why it is they are doing it, and why the boss is doing the thing the boss is doing. Because they are going to have to step up and be the boss if the boss isn't there. If you do manage a team and you're out for a day or two or whatever, and you come back and everything is running smoothly, that's how you know that you're a good leader, because everything ran smoothly without you. Now, if you return and everything's a mess and nobody could get anything done without you, those are signs from the universe that you need to work on your leadership skills, because everything fell apart without you. And that's not where we want the company, whatever, the thing that we're doing together that I'm leading you in to be. How do you build culture intentionally? Heart, mind, coherence. Electromagnetism is just one of the ways that we do it, but the heart is magnetic, the mind is electric. When you start using these two things together, it's electromagnetism. And I attract people to the things that I'm doing because I'm having so much fun doing it. If I'm not having fun doing it, there's something wrong. And that's how I try and build culture. Attract people to the things that I'm doing because I believe so much in them, and I'm having so much fun that it looks like maybe someone would want to get out of the pattern that they're in and try something else new and fun. What are some of the other, how do you prioritize when everything feels urgent? That's a very important question. You need to decipher for yourself based on whatever's most important to you. And I think sometimes that's the issue with priorities. Everything feels urgent, but there has to be some structure in what's most important to you. A podcast should probably have unbelievable audio. And then you should probably start worrying about the video and the special effects and the sound effects. I didn't even necessarily do that as I was starting the podcast. But as you get out there and you start doing the things, you start to recognize in real time what is the most important and coming up with some sort of priority list so that you can go down a checklist of what needs to be done. And if you don't get to the bottom of that checklist, sometimes you need to put out a product anyways. Or as a leader, you need to make the decision on whether you're scrapping this, because we would rather put out a perfect product late than a half-baked cake early. It really depends on the scenario, just like we were just saying there. What's your approach to hiring A-plus players? They will reveal themselves. They will reveal themselves. Even just interviewing many different people for the podcast, the industry night that I do with all my friends, it's obvious to see who has potential to be a producer or to be a writer or to be on-air talent or a camera director. That is so obvious to me because the people reveal themselves. That's my approach to hiring. You want to be with someone that you attract, right? That wants to deal with you and wants to work on the same thing that you're doing. Those people will just show up and start doing it. And when they start doing it, you should hire them because they're doing the thing that you need them to do. And you didn't know you needed them to do it until they started doing it so great. They just show up. I'm telling you, relax. How do you structure your day? Personal discipline. This is important stuff. Whoopsie daisy. Should have turned that off. I think it's important to have some sort of idea what you want to do, and I never know what I'm going to do until I wake up in the morning. It's crazy. I have some idea of the things that I want to get accomplished. I never know what order they're going to be in or what the priority is going to be until I wake up in the morning and I just feel the energy of the day. I try and structure my day so that I take care of myself first with my Tai Chi arm swings, my stretching, tea, taking care of my head and clearing that out, meditation, or a full body workout. I call it a full body tune-up. And then if I'm lucky enough, I take it for a test drive, doing a workout. That helps me clear my head and see whatever it is that I need to work on for the day. What habits have had the highest return on investment? Silence, listening. Listening has had the best return on investment ever. When you sit in that silence and you begin to connect with something deeper than yourself, that's how you know you're on the right track, buddy. You're on the right track. How do you handle stress at scale? You have to have outlets. I think working out, just like we were talking about, is a massive outlet for my stress at scale. I also think spending time with my friends at work, even just hanging out with my friends, talking to them, my wife, my family, getting good food, the people that the restaurants that I'm a regular at, just hanging out with the bartenders that I get to see. That's just it helps you with your stress. You don't even know. It's just something familiar, a familiar relationship where you get to forget about all of the things that are happening in real time. I guess taking breaks is also part of that. Who do you go to for advice? Nature. I go to nature for advice, try and silence myself and get out into the world. Where are we at camera battery wise? That's the only thing that I'm really worried about, and it's not showing me on there. I guess we'll just keep going down this list. Chat GPT does do a great job. What's something people misunderstand about being a CEO? I guess I put CEO in here, founder. Did I even put it in the question? I don't think most people understand what CEOs do at most companies. Small businesses understand completely that the CEO has to be... I guess let's back up a step. What we're doing is we're creating a golem. We're using our energy to create something that does not exist, whether it's a podcast, a piece of art, or a business. What we're doing is we're using our energy to create something that doesn't exist. The CEO is the person responsible for keeping that entity alive. I don't think of myself as a CEO because whenever this podcast needs to die, that's when it needs to die. I don't need to keep the podcast alive for payment or because I feel like doing it or like for anything else, to keep anybody else employed. Like whenever I feel like this ride is over, that's when the ride needs to die. I don't think most CEOs think like that. I think they think about keeping whatever their entity is that they've created alive and for different reasons, those are important. But we'd really have to, being a CEO is really something we should dive more into, because there's different layers to that on what it means, like from a lawyer perspective, from a law perspective, and then when you're a creator and like being the chief executive of creating the thing, is sometimes you're sitting back and looking at that one we'll need to dive into. What problems were you obsessed with solving? Why I didn't understand what was happening in the world. Like I didn't like my place in the world, and I couldn't figure out where I fit in because I didn't understand what was happening in the world. That's my origin story. That's how I got obsessed with all this stuff. When did you know you had something real? Probably like before I started. That's this for men specifically. You're on some sort of journey figuring out your reason for being, and I think most men will go to the ends of the earth to figure out what they were put here specifically to do. And I never would have got to this moment if I didn't have something real. And that may have just been a heart-mind coherence. It may be authenticity. Like I don't know what exactly it is. There's a lot of low moments. There's going to be so many of them. What was your lowest moment early on? I think that you expect to get a reaction in some way, shape, or form. When you put something out there into the world, you expect people to react. And I think that it is a reality check when you see how little people care about something that you care so much about. And that is like a moment that is a low moment. You can sit there for a month, a year, a decade, your entire life if you want, or you can like immediately get up and just keep moving. I think that one's ability to immediately get up and just keep moving and let those things roll off you like water off a duck's back is the resilience that you need to find to get to those high moments of doing 100 episodes. Like, it's pretty crazy doing 100 episodes, especially me, the producer, producing all of this, being the talent, editing behind the scenes, all of this, audio, video engineer. Did you ever consider quitting? Yeah, dude, I still consider quitting. Like, is the thing that I'm creating, does it still have a life of its own? Am I building something where even if there's no audience for it today, eventually there may be an audience and it may help someone through? Because if I'm doing that, then I should continue down that path. If I'm still learning, if I'm still having fun, which I definitely am, meeting new people, making new connections, then yeah, I'm definitely going to continue. But I consider all the time quitting. I think that's maybe something more people should do, is consider if they should quit what they're doing because they're no longer having fun, they're no longer learning, they're no longer enjoying the thing that they're doing. I ask myself those questions in self-reflection all the time. That's what keeps me moving on the path and so energized in the path and creating the amazing content that I love to create. Risk and resilience. What fear did you have to overcome? I guess putting yourself out there, especially if you're going to be on camera. I guess I had to go through the fear of figuring out all the technical aspects. I knew that I understood the stock market technically because I spent the time diligently figuring out what happens when a stock gets traded. The plumbing of where it goes when you hit buy on your cell phone to like that signal, where does that go and who receives that? And does that go into a dark pool or does that go into a public market? Does some guy that we think about on the stock exchange actually stand there and say, yeah, 100 for one share? Or is that all just a facade that I'm meant to think? And actually what's happening is I'm getting slowly ripped off by like margins of money in dark pools by high frequency traders and algorithms that are actually happening. So yes, I was afraid that I was going to have to learn all this stuff in a new industry all over again. But the reality is what happens when you actually know something inside and out is you see its reverberation out there in the world, because we're all inside some sort of plasma that doesn't allow for energy to go unchecked. Whatever it is that you know about, guess what? It's a lot closer to all the other things than you would ever even imagine. How do you manage uncertainty? I don't know. Just keep moving. I just keep moving. What's a pivot that changed everything? Stop caring about the audience. When you forget about that, you just keep moving, especially with a podcast. How do you know when to stick versus pivot? Gut instinct. If you don't have a relationship with your gut instinct, which is all the bacteria in your body that is doing the processing of all the things that you put inside your body, that is organisms that are keeping you alive. It's weird to think about from a biological perspective like that, but that's exactly what is happening. And they are tied into energy and different types of energy. Maybe they are less linear on a time scale than you. So there's different things that you are tuning into from a quantum perspective, both the future and the past. These are all different things that you can pay attention to when you know what you're looking for. But in terms of sticking versus pivoting on any decision that I've made, like whether I want to start, I'm having one right now, on whether I want to start a second YouTube page specifically dedicated to the consciousness diary, what we're doing right now. Or do I want to keep it all wrapped up under one umbrella, do everything under one banner, the universe according to Mugsy? And I don't know, and I'm listening right now. Is what I'm doing is I'm listening, and I'm trying to feel my way through that. We are doing a few of the tests right now, and I think it will be obvious. But that's probably the hardest decision that I've had to make up until this point. Oh my God, there's just so many questions here. We're not going to make it through all of them, but 100 episodes. This has been so nice. I've learned so much. What's the legacy and impact? These are some good ones to close out on. What kind of impact do you want to leave? I guess I don't. I don't. If everything ran smoothly and I went away and no one noticed and all of a sudden things were running smoothly, I would be a boss that achieved his goal. And it would mean that I can move on now and I no longer have to do the thing that I was doing. I can go focus my energy, my attention, where my attention goes, my energy flows somewhere else. How do I measure fulfillment? In my own satisfaction and heart. That's always the only way that I measure it. It's got nothing to do with any of you or anything else going on there. It is only how I feel. My energy, my frequency, my vibration, how I feel like I am coherently interacting with the world, or whether I'm coherently interacting with the world, and like what I personally need for my journey. I might do a podcast every week. I might do a live 3 times a week for the next 5 years, and then I may not do a live again or a podcast again for a decade after that. I'll know what I need to do for my fulfillment. And I trust that through the heart-mind coherence and all of the things that we've discovered. So thank you to everyone that tuned in for this live 100 chapters of the Universe According to Mugsy podcast that you can find at mugsythecreator.com. All of my links, we post these things to YouTube, Patreon, Spotify, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Instagram. We post clips, so you guys can tune in and find me wherever it is that you guys are listening. I hope that you tune in for a few more of the conversations that we are having as we move into the 2nd century of episodes for this podcast. And we have so many more guests that I can't wait to tell you about. I can't wait to introduce you to. There's so much going on in this universe that I call this reality that we are creating through our own consciousness. It has ripples that begin to reach the culture. And if you're lucky enough, some of those ripples will produce current events that you are happy to see as a creation of your own reality, guys. I am Mugsy, the creator, the host of the Universe According to Mugsy, and this, which is the Consciousness Diary that I am doing now live for you. Check in on the Patreon, submit some questions at mugsythecreator.com, or head right over to patreon.com/mugsythecreator if you want to get involved in the discussion, have some conversations, and I will see you guys soon. It is snowing. Now it's coming down, and I have a lot to do tonight. Take back your consciousness. I love you, and I am out.